Welcome to another episode of Conduct Detrimental. I am Dan Lust, joined by Matt Tympanick and Sharma. Two topics on the docket: Trevor Bauer's 2-year record-breaking suspension and Isaiah Wong, the Miami basketball player at the center of the NIL universe. Before I kick it to you, a reminder: the podcast is sponsored by Themis Bar Review. We're going to get into some criminal law today, some crim procedure, some administrative law, and a reminder that Themis Bar Review is the best bar prep company in the entire country. themisbar.com/con-detrimental. And if you really looking for some bar prep, obviously the bar is right around the corner. Just ask us. We'll tell you all the good things about Themis Bar Review. You can certainly drop in our DMs. Okay. The big news is certainly Trevor Bauer. But before we get into that, Matt, Tarun, what are your overall thoughts on Mr. Bauer? Matt, I'll hand it to you. You're our resident DA here. Just some overall thoughts, and then we'll kind of unpack the facts here.
I think that for me, when reviewing the suspension, so as we all know that on Friday afternoon, Trevor Bauer was suspended for 324 games, the equivalent of 2 full baseball seasons, from the investigation into sexual assault under the sexual assault domestic violence policy of the MLB. For me, that is one of the longest in history, with the exception of Pete Rose's, somebody else's, and it's the longest non-drug suspension since the 1919 Black Sox scandal. When I'm hearing a 2-year suspension, I'm thinking to myself, okay, what did they actually found? And then sure enough, we found out soon after later that there was another accuser who came forward. The Washington Post had an article on it on Friday, making allegations strikingly similar to the allegations made by the San Diego woman, which was the basis of the permanent restraining order hearing, which was done last August in Los Angeles County.
It's a good setup. You know, obviously the three of us spoke, and Tarun, this is kind of directed to you, but we want to be clear on this episode. We are just laying out what we know, right? There are now 3 accusers, as Matt kind of pointed out, record-breaking suspension. We were going to record an episode on Friday, and then we're like, well, there's more stuff coming out. And now there's a 3rd accuser. So there's 3 accusers. Bauer has his responses to all of those. In the backdrop, there are 3 defamation suits filed by Trevor Bauer against Deadspin, against The Athletic, and against the woman, the San Diego woman at the heart of that Pasadena lawsuit. But I want to make clear, we are not trying to pass judgment. We're just putting out what's out there. And you guys are free to make your perception one way or the other. But we have 3 big baseball fans here, 2 lawyers and a soon-to-be lawyer, soon-to-be bar taker. He's taking Themis, obviously Tarun I'm talking about. You know, there's a baseball mechanism behind this. There's going to be an arbitration proceeding. We're going to talk about the burden of proof, who it's on there, what part of the domestic violence policy Bauer's alleged to have been violated, all that fun stuff. So Tarun, let me some high level stuff. Optics here, right? We talk a lot about Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson has no suspension as of today, $230 million guaranteed contract. 100%, guaranteed within that. So I think it's a fair point right now. Like, Watson's got 22 cases. Trevor Bauer has 0. It doesn't necessarily mean one of them did it and one of them didn't, or the handling of one is right and one is wrong, but they are absolute polar opposites right now. So Tarun, your thoughts on just the divergent handling between the NFL and Major League Baseball?
Well, I think one thing that they have in common is just that we haven't necessarily seen a lot into the black box of decision-making at the commissioner level. And I think that's one thing that's really bothered people about the way that the NFL has handled a lot of their scandals over the years, whether it's Ray Rice or Deflategate or anything. And so what we're looking for in this situation more than anything is transparency. And it should be clear to anyone that's listening to this that the goal here is not to advocate for Bauer or anything like that. We are only interested in the process of it. As Matt said, when you're talking about a suspension of this length, it's precedent setting. This is the longest suspension that has been handed down under this joint policy between the union and the league. So we just need to be clear about what is going into these decisions and what's going into the suspensions being handed down. So what's going to happen from here is given that Bauer did not agree to the suspension, he's going to file a grievance, and that's going to be judged by an arbitrator who's hired in conjunction between the league and the players union, and he can also be fired by either side. So Bauer's going to present his case and MLB is going to present theirs, and it's going to be up to the arbitrator to render a decision on that. But in that procedure, I think we're going to see a little bit more transparency in terms of like what the MLB considered in making this decision.
So Matt, I know, Matt, you have this point ready because Matt, you think maybe this one of these defamation cases is going to show a lot of light on these claims. So let me set the stage, and then Matt, you've done a lot of digging this. I want to give you your proper runway. Okay. Well, again, we got defamation suits filed by Bauer. We have three accusers, right, who spoke to Major League Baseball. What was interesting, right, in all this, we all kind of said internally between us as we were trying to figure out this episode, this was on Friday, if Manfred had made this 2-year suspension, this record-breaking, precedent-setting suspension off of the San Diego woman who a judge viewed was, her petition was at points materially misleading. That would be very odd, right? Because when it comes to arbitration, as Tarun, you were getting into, the burden of proof is on Manfred to show that Bauer violated the policy. So, if a judge, right, is saying that this person maybe is not credible, right? And, Matt, you and I were talking about it. The judge ruled that while this woman was unconscious, the allegation originally, the San Diego woman, that she was rendered unconscious by Bauer and that she awoke to some type of penetration. We'll try to keep it as less graphic as we can. The judge ruled that that was not the case. What the judge ruled is that the only thing that she believed that occurred while this woman was unconscious was being hit in the rear, just with I think a hand or something, a hit. It's different, right? I don't really, I'm not so comfortable getting in the weeds of the decision, but it's very different than what was alleged. So the judge essentially ruled there that what was occurring that while the woman was unconscious was not some form of penetration. As gross as that word sounds, that is a really big difference when it comes to Major League Baseball's domestic violence policy. So Matt, I'm going to give you the floor. Talk a little bit about what the domestic violence policy is and when it comes to Major League Baseball, and then we'll unwind the allegations against him.
Okay, so the policy defines a non-consensual sexual act in part as when a person uses force or when the victim is unconscious or legally incapable of consent. The policy also states that a single incident of abusive behavior may subject a player to discipline. And I got that from Bill Shankin's article from the LA Times recently. When you think about the three allegations, three accusers, let's break them down one by one. The first and the most notorious is the San Diego woman, which was the basis of the permanent restraining order last August. She alleged that Bauer choked her unconscious and continued to engage in sexual intercourse with her after she had been rendered unconscious. And what they actually did a controlled call on it, which it means that law enforcement calls the defendant with the victim on the line and try to get the defendant to make statements. Mr. Bauer, obviously, the defendant is not really the right word, call the alleged abuser and try to get him to make admissions. The only thing Mr. Bauer admitted to, reportedly, is that he punched her in the butt during the act of sexual intercourse. The judge in her ruling said that the only thing that she found was Mr. Bauer, in fact, hit her in the butt. So the wording was definitely different. And I think based on the Mr. Bauer's reported admission, I'm going to lean more towards he punched her. And that was without her consent, allegedly. Second, we had the other accusation from the Ohio woman, the first Ohio woman last summer, where she got a temporary restraining order after Mr. Bauer allegedly punched and or choked her without her consent.
Maybe this could help break it up. The first woman was an incident that happened while he was with the Dodgers, right? I think that's easy. Yeah. The second incident, they're a little off temporally, but the second woman was a restraining order that was filed while he was a member of then the Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians. But that's how I view them. There's the Dodgers claims, there's the Indians claims, and then go ahead, Matt. The third one is while he was a minor league baseball player, essentially.
Yes, and this is a Columbus woman who alleged that Mr. Bauer struck her during sex back in 2018. The third woman was the new accuser that came out on Friday afternoon. When the suspension was originally announced, like you said, it was kind of odd that a judge already found the San Diego's woman's accusation material misleading, and yet Rob Manfred still gave him a 2-year suspension. It makes more sense. Now you have a third accuser who are making strikingly similar allegations. And this woman, if I read the article, stated that she is willing to testify at the arbitration hearing. So it's entirely possible we're going to be able to get more information as it would leak out from the arbitration hearing itself. That being said, recently, Mr. Bauer actually filed the defamation suit against the San Diego woman. And as all of you know who have taken constitutional law, or when you do take constitutional law, truth is an absolute defense to defamation. So at that potential trial, if there were, but even during discovery, I have a hard time thinking the San Diego woman's attorneys won't try to see if the Columbus woman would testify to corroborate what she said, based on this ability that creates a pattern. Habit evidence is something that would be very, very substantial to a jury to be able to find out whether the San Diego woman's allegations were in fact true, because you have somebody else saying something very similar. Now it lends credence to what the San Diego woman was alleging.
Okay, so I'll be the person, I'm happy to say it. Bauer has been on record as saying that he has not done anything wrong, right? Bauer's team put out a statement on Friday that essentially said that this new Washington Post article didn't include his comments. So we're happy to include them with a broad brushstroke, right? Bauer is saying that the allegations are not true. He has never violated someone's consent. And that, when it comes to the suspension, that he is, he feels confident in his appeal, that he feels confident he's going to win. So, that can't be understated here, right? And whether or not he's going to sue, I'll put that at, whether or not he's going to appeal, I'll put that at minus $1 million, because he's now sued 3 people for defamation. He's obviously going to appeal this. Okay, so just a brief recap. Matt, you're calling the San Diego woman. I'll call her the woman while he was with the Dodgers. Then there's the other second case you talked about. That's the that occurred while he was a member of the Indians. And the third, we'll call it the third, the newest one that has come out is actually from 2013, 2014, a little bit later. We'll say that's the woman that occurred while he was with the Columbus Clippers with the farm team. So you have 3 allegations, and Matt, you say a term like pattern. We could say the allegations are similar, but Trevor Bauer is continuing to say that these things are not true, what people are saying. But that said, right, we got to say it. Criminal court requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Right. Part of the reason there's no criminal charge against Bauer relating to the Dodgers case is because they didn't think they could get guilt at a 90% clip. Right. They just didn't think they were going to do it. And for the restraining order, the judge didn't believe it. Whatever the standard was there, I think it was closer to like 51%. Manfred standard is much less than that. Manfred standard is just kind of like, did the guy abuse his discretion at a certain point? Did he just make it up? Does he have a vendetta against Bauer because Bauer's out here calling him a clown and everything that Bauer has called him over the years? That's the kind of rhetoric that's going on Twitter right now, that how can you give this guy, right? And, we talked about on our Matt, I know you mentioned Stephen Wright when we were talking offline. Of the members, I think there's been 15 people that have been suspended under the domestic violence policy. Some of them have been arrested. Some of them have been charged in criminal court, yet none of them got 2 years. So there is something odd, right? That Bauer has not been charged with the crime and he has a 2-year suspension, right? And we are not certainly going to be on the show talking about what's worse, right? Hitting someone or whatnot. We're not here to judge, morally what's worse. They're all bad, right? But if you're going to give someone a record-breaking suspension, you'd have to feel that the evidence warrants that. And, we just don't know this because, as we've mentioned, the collective bargaining agreement doesn't allow this level of transparency. It probably should, because I think it would help both sides, but it does not. So, Tarun, okay, we've laid out a lot. Hopefully everyone's still following us here. What are your thoughts as of today, as we sit here, Bauer's chances on this appeal, getting this thing reduced, potentially getting it thrown out? What are your thoughts there?
Well, it's not unheard of, right? Alex Rodriguez won his appeal. He was going to be suspended for 200 games and ended up being suspended for just the 2014 season.
Ryan Braun.
Very infamous Ryan Braun chain of custody. Like his urine sample was stored improperly according to the guidelines. So he ended up getting off for that, but later served, I think, 60 games or something like that. I don't know if Bauer is going to get off here. You said that we don't have the answers, and we don't. If they find these allegations to be credible from the third woman, then, like we've mentioned, that's a pattern. Why would that not be something that they could set a record-breaking suspension for? In the event that Bauer does win, say he is able to, like A-Rod, get his suspension whittled down to a year, cut in half, I still don't think that he's ever going to pitch ever again. I don't think any team in the modern era is going to take the PR hit necessary to have that guy in your clubhouse, especially when it seems like his Dodgers teammates don't even really like him. No one has stood up for Trevor Bauer. Not a single person that he's associated with. It's just him on his own.
Well, his agent, his team, like his.
Sure. Yeah. Rachel Luba. I mean, he's paying them though. But so I'm saying like no one that lacks a fiduciary duty to Trevor Bauer is standing up for him. And I think that kind of says something. I think that kind of indicates what type of reception that he would get in any clubhouse anywhere in Major League Baseball. So I think his career, for all intents and purposes, is over, regardless of whether he can find a way to get out and win an appeal.
Just so everyone knows our thoughts on the show, Tarun and I both happen to be San Francisco Giants fans. Tarun's also like a Minnesota Twins fan. Matt, you're a Red Sox fan?
Yes.
How are you? You're the only Red Sox fan in Florida. That's a weird connection.
Because I was originally from Massachusetts. I
do not hear a Boston accent anywhere in you.
It's disappeared over the last 6 years I've lived in Florida.
So like here's, and Matt, this is, you made this point, which I thought was excellent. I want to make sure we spotlight it. And then, I don't know how much there is to add. We're going to continue to follow this. I think Tarun, there's people pouring dirt on the grave of Bauer. They say his career's over, this and that. I'm never going to close that door. Michael Vick was like, Mr. Public Enemy #1 fighting dogs, and he made a comeback, right? It's happened before. A guy like Ben Roethlisberger didn't get charged in criminal court, had to go to like counseling or some Roger Goodell ordered him into some type of treatment therapy or something. He got suspended, then he came back. So people have done, I don't know, I want to say allegedly, but found by the society or sometimes the league or sometimes the courts have done bad things and they've made a comeback. So we're not here to say what's worse than the other, but sometimes talent wins out. And Trevor Bauer not so long ago was the Cy Young Award winner. So there's that.
I think that this is a completely different era of accountability than the mid 2000s were.
You're right. But I'm just, Cy Young Award winner it says something. I don't know. And Bauer, even when he pitched with the Dodgers in limited time last year, was pretty good. So I don't know. I don't want anybody to think I'm defending it. I'm just saying we've seen people do bad things and have had second chances and third chances sometimes. What I do want to say from a 30,000 foot level, Trevor Bauer is suing for defamation, right? And Matt, you and I maybe disagree on the value of this, which is, I think, is a fun academic conversation. Trevor Bauer is suing the San Diego woman or the Dodgers case, whatever you want to call it, for defamation. So that woman did not turn around and file a civil lawsuit for monetary damage. She could have. We had not ruled that out. The Ohio case, the one that Matt is talking about from this, we'll say the quote unquote new one, is a 2013 incident. I think there's some allegation that occurred a little bit later, but I'm looking at the statute of limitations in Ohio. I can make an argument that most, if not all, of the statute of limitations have passed. So, Bauer has calculatedly, if that's a word, in a calculated manner, kind of peeling back the wounds to some extent, right? When you file a defamation case, you're inviting discovery, you're inviting depositions, you're inviting more conversation about this particular case. So I've kind of said at the end of the day, if Bauer wins on the defamation cases, but I'm talking about really that one in particular, and shows that those claims were made, right? This false claim, I'm putting it in quotes, was made with actual malice. I think that's got to be pretty strong for Bauer's, argument. How did Major League Baseball potentially believe this Dodgers case, a San Diego woman, if a judge, right, first found it was materially misleading, and then subsequently, we're playing hypothetical here, in the defamation case, found it was made with actual malice. I think Bauer's going for the, no pun intended, the absolute home run, right? And he's set these up with 3 big defamation cases. So I actually think it's a smart legal maneuver. Bauer is kind of at the whim of Major League Baseball, and he's going on the offensive as best as he can. But Matt, disagreement is welcomed on the show, Matt. So I'm here for it. Tell me why I'm wrong.
For me, it was, if you want this thing to blow over, obviously the allegations for the Columbus woman are new and they're old, and they probably could have ended up being a week-long story, obviously suspension, but the act of turning around and then suing the San Diego woman for these allegations that she made the whole thing up, that they were made with actual malice, I really see as a tactical mistake. Because for me, all right, all those people you mentioned, they served their sentences and then they moved on because people forgot about it. When you do lawsuits and you keep the conversation going, Trevor Bauer can't honestly think he's going to play in the MLB again. Even if he gets money against the Ohio woman, even if he gets his appeal at the arbitration. He wins that and he gets a suspension, reduced, or eliminated. Like Tarun said, I don't see any other MLB team wanting to deal with the backlash of that, because people hearing these allegations, they're not hearing one accuser. They're not just hearing two. Now you've heard three accusers making these allegations of rough sexual intercourse, sexual acts that may or may not have been consented to, and even some allegations that he had sexual intercourse after he rendered them unconscious. Those are things that when you're in a locker room, especially with players who have wives, who have kids, you're looking at this guy in the face and you're trying to say, this guy is the starting pitcher of my team. This guy is going to lead me to a World Series. People in the stands, people in the locker room, they're not going to be able to look past that and be like, I'm okay with this.
Yeah, what are you going to tell the Cleveland Browns fans right now, right? What we're talking about are allegations, right? So, like, again, the reason I brought up what fans we are, none of us are fans of Trevor Bauer. We're all fans of different teams, right? I know there's not many people that are out here being baseball fans of Trevor Bauer, but this is a legal show. In our country, innocent until proven guilty, right? Their burden is always to show that the person did the thing. They're all allegations, right? Someone can't go to jail just because someone says, like, hey, you did X, right? There has to be some level of proof. So a Major League Baseball found there to be sufficient proof. Bauer doesn't believe it. That's why he's appealing it. The restraining order court didn't think there was sufficient proof there, and there's no other cases. So, I made the point, and there are people in my replies yelling at me, which is fine. I didn't say anything wrong. The point is, Watson is going to be the starter for the Cleveland Browns, most likely while these cases remain active in some way, shape, or form, because those cases all got pushed. The trial is not going to be held until after next year's Super Bowl. So I don't know, right? Like, I'm not disagreeing with anybody that it's going to be hard pressed for Bauer to get another job in the league. But then, like, I'm looking across the aisle and you have 22, 21 women, whatever it is, like, that are saying that Watson did something really bad, that was non-consensual in a way, yet, like, I don't know, Bauer's going to suit up and play. So the dichotomy between the two leagues has really just got me scratching my head. And I think, where we'll place all this, like, built up questioning, I think it's going to apply more pressure on Goodell to issue a suspension. It wasn't guaranteed that it was going to happen, but I think the length, optically, I think Goodell's certainly paying attention to what's going on with Bauer.
When you look at the two cases with Bauer and Watson, definitely what Tarun is saying, I think it has some weight to it, that nobody has spoken up from the Dodgers organization. Sure, his agent and his attorneys have all venomously denied these allegations, but I don't think there is nobody in the locker room who went and said, I think he's getting railroaded. I think he's getting the short end of the stick. It's like, we need to move on from that. I think part of it is people just don't like him personally as much as they may like Deshaun Watson, because for me, if you're the Browns organization, you have 22 accusers versus now 3, and you just gave the guy with 22 accusers the largest fully guarantee in history to win football games. And it's like, all right, I know you guys haven't won a Super Bowl, but at the same time, you're like, what is the value of winning? For me, Trevor Bauer, I really don't think he's going to ever play again. Is that particularly the beyond a reasonable doubt standard? No, because that's not the standard when suspending somebody. It's a much lower standard. And I think Rob Manfred has access to evidence that we don't have, allegations, statements that we don't have, that we're not going to be able to see, part of the CBA.
Right. That's what Manfred is telling us. But, Manfred has bungled things before, and it wouldn't be the last. It just seems odd that the guy who is so outspoken against Manfred gets the record-breaking suspension, right? I mean, when other people have been arrested, literally, like, so. Tarun, I'll give you the final word here. I just hope if the roles were reversed, right, and the Cleveland Guardians, who certainly are not a fan of the show with our handling of the baseball team, but if the Cleveland Guardians signed Trevor Bauer right after all of this to a $230 million contract over 5 years, right, that the same energy would be here. It's just allegations. It's just allegations, right? Oh, the guy should be allowed to pitch. It's just allegations, right? But I don't sense that energy at all. So again, people can say I'm defending Trevor Bauer. I'm not. I'm just saying, like, innocent until proven guilty has to mean something. It has to. And, I'm kind of just out here saying, like, these are allegations. If Manfred can prove it, good luck. That's fine. But Bauer thinks he has an appeal, and we don't know, right? What you said, Matt, we don't know what baseball knows. So let's not assume that baseball knows exactly what they're doing. Tarun, final words here, my friend.
The cynic in me thinks that there aren't as many really elite NFL quarterbacks as there are good Major League Baseball pitchers. So that probably contributes to how many chances Bauer is going to get as well, and who's willing to take that PR hit. I think from here, there's no distinct timetable. There's no stay as there would be in like a PED case where a player is continued to play while they wait out the judgment. In this case, that doesn't exist for the domestic violence incidents, and he's going to remain on the restricted list and not be able to pitch. The other thing is that this time is not going to count towards his suspension. So ultimately, if he were to start serving the suspension this past Friday, it would have been the 19th game of 2024 when he would no longer be under contract that he would be allowed to pitch again. But this is not going to count towards that. So that clock just gets longer and longer. So like you said, he's really going for the entire home run to try to beat these to the extent that you can possibly do it.
Yeah, and we didn't mention it, but the 2-year suspension covers the life of his Dodgers contract. He's not going to get paid a dime during that duration. So the prize gem of free agency that year, the Mets were trying to sign him. I remember, Tarun, you were all excited. The Mets are going to sign Trevor Bauer. You have this great pitching staff. $100 million 3-year contract. Trevor Bauer pitched a very brief portion of that first year, not to be heard from again. So, that's why you see Bauer fighting tooth and nail, because I don't know if he feels that he's going to be such a, putting it lightly, a highly sought after commodity once that contract expires. Okay, Matt, final words, and then we'll close this and move to NIL.
I'll be interested to see what happens at the arbitration hearing. The article I read from the Washington Post said the Columbus woman stated that she's willing to testify. So it'll be interesting to see how the arbitrator sees the evidence and whether he keeps the suspension in place, reduces it, or eliminates it as a whole.
Matt, our resident DA, Tarun, our resident just baseball fan in general, and budding lawyer. Good luck with the bar. Matt, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, so that was Matt Tympanick, our resident DA. He is at Tympanick Law on social media. Matt has been with us for a while. He's one of our dedicated writers on the site. He's always messaging me. We talk a lot about different criminal cases. So Matt is certainly worth a follow. Really, really smart guy. His own practice based out of Florida. Okay. Tarun, just you and I now to close up the pod. So I wanted to have you on. First of all, credit to you. I hit you up on short notice for this one. I knew you were good to talk Bauer, but I really wanted to talk name, image, and likeness. So we're about a year into the era when, about a year ago this time in April, we were talking about what NIL would look like come July 1st. We were really kind of an NIL heavy podcast. I think that was the big story, what was going to happen on July 1st. And there have been some stories that we popped in and covered, like earlier this year, we had the Darren versus Darren debate, which was kind of like a good recap of what was going on. I don't know, people sign up to our show because they trust us when big things happen. I think maybe the biggest thing has happened in this NIL era and happened in the last 2 weeks, whatever it was, one thing, two things, three things, there's really been a shift in the dialogue around NIL. Some people are really adamantly opposed to NIL. So Tarun, why we had you on? You are really at the forefront of this. You have created an NIL clinic at Minnesota. I know you have spoke about that in a previous podcast, but there are people in this space that are making the NIL space look horrendous. And that's a little bit of this Isaiah Wong story we'll talk about. But Tarun, let me give you the floor. The state of NIL as we sit here today, just your unfiltered thoughts here.
Yeah, it's just a little shaky right now, right? But that's going to be the case with any new thing that's coming into an unregulated market. The decision by the NCAA to kind of abdicate any sort of responsibility and only giving the smallest guardrails in terms of the interim policy last year is what created this current environment. And what is the current environment? We've got thousands of kids in the portal that they're transferring to other schools, giving up their guaranteed aid, and they don't necessarily know whether there's going to be a spot for them at another school. And every year there's thousands of high schoolers that are matriculating at new schools, taking those spots. I think a lot of these kids who are in the portal looking for better opportunities are going to end up left out in the cold. I don't put the blame on the students. What are they necessarily supposed to do? They're looking for the best opportunity for themselves, and that's what they should be doing. But what we have is a failure of leadership from the very top, and we need someone to really take charge. And I'm hopeful that that's going to be the conferences. The conferences are really what gives the NCAA any sort of power. So maybe they come together and they decide that this is an outdated model, and they decide to pursue a different model where basically the NCAA's only role is to administer these championships. But to me, it seems like some sort of conference collective would be able to do that anyway. All of that leadership talk aside, I think that the big story this week was Isaiah Wong. He helped lead Miami to the Elite Eight this past year. That's an all-time outcome for Miami basketball. This past week, or a couple weeks ago, they had announced that they had signed one of the top transfers in the market, a kid named Nigel Pack from Kansas State, and he had signed a 2-year, $800,000 NIL deal with Life Wallet. John Ruiz, who is a major booster of the.
Let's take a pause to talk about John Ruiz. This is really where it lies. So, John Ruiz with Nigel Pack and now Isaiah Wong. There's 3 Miami things circling here. I went on a Locked On Miami with a friend of the show, Alex Dono, and he was kind of saying, he's a Miami fan. He goes, is it good what Ruiz is doing? And I'm like, well, I don't know. It seems to be walking very close to this line of these pay for play, right? But the NCAA, as you've pointed out, Tarun, is not here. So I think Alex asked me, is what John Ruiz is doing, is it illegal? I'm like, well, let me preface everything I'm about saying with no one's like if a tree falls in a forest and no one hears it, doesn't make a sound. If you do something illegal and there's no one there to punish you, like, is it illegal? Like, I don't know. Like, probably not. Like, what defines something being illegal? That you have actually some punishment for it? No one's getting punished for anything. So John Ruiz, he's, this billionaire. I think he's a former personal injury lawyer. You can find our law connection there. He posts on Twitter, like, so proud to announce that we've given Nigel Pack $800,000 over 2 years. He was a former K-State basketball player. So the guy's making $400,000 a year. John Ruiz said the quiet part out loud, and nobody else does that. But like, I don't know, is there any punishment for saying the quiet part out loud? I'm not sure. So what I've kind of discerned happened, I read all the reporting here. I believe that Nigel Pack's deal, because it was publicly reported with Life Wallet, the representatives for Isaiah Wong basically said, well, if this transfers getting $800,000, and I'm sure there's other Life Wallet deals, my guy should be getting a little bit more. And if he doesn't get a little bit more, he'll be prepared to enter the transfer portal tomorrow. And that was the May 1st cutoff deadline. So, all of a sudden you had, all of legal Twitter pop up and say, hey, I mean, that seems like some form of an inducement's being violated. Unless you pay the guy, he's going to go to a different school. And the implication is that the other school is going to have given him a lot of money. So these illegal inducements were not supposed to have been allowed. Also, pay for play was not supposed to be allowed. But John Ruiz has this company, Life Wallet, that are giving out marketing deals, which, I don't know, look pretty close to be some form of a salary, right? It just, I don't think it's the optics that anybody expected. But Ruiz is making, people might look at him as this great guy. And I know friend of the show, Darren Heitner, was, him and Ruiz are tweeting back and forth at each other. Ruiz in some circles is kind of like a maverick here in a really good way, right? He's kind of setting the stage and he's operating in shades of gray, but making it a great world for student athletes. And for Miami, the guy is, I think very highly thought after. But for people that aren't or maybe more risk averse, John Ruiz is very, and maybe schools that aren't Miami don't love John Ruiz because this guy's putting his own money and putting his name out there and nothing's happening to him. So I don't know, Tarun, you were, I think we're both pretty plugged into the NIL world. What are your thoughts on Ruiz here? Do you think of him as like a hero, bad guy? I mean, I think there's, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't know if anything that he's doing is illegal because I'm not really sure what the rules are. So
I don't think anybody knows what the rules are. I don't think the rules exist.
Yeah. And so that's everything to me comes back to the NCAA abdicating their leadership role here. And so if no one knows what the rules are and no one can enforce it, like in the situation that you're talking about, if a tree falls, like, yeah, it absolutely makes a sound. But in this case, like, we don't know that he's doing anything illegal because we don't know what is legal and what is illegal. The only thing that we've heard from the NCAA is that they were looking into those bulk deals, like whether it was TiVo or Built Bar or.
Yeah. When was that? They looked into it. We checked it out.
Yeah. And much like everything from NCAA's home office, we didn't hear anything about how that was resolved. They'll probably put Missouri on suspension or something again.
Or they'll punish Nebraska because, I'm going after Nebraska. The quote from the agent, which got people like, so you and I do know what is illegal. Right now, Florida-based schools based on Florida state law can't be involved in the NIL process. California doesn't have that restriction because I know they were helping Caleb Williams at USC out with their deal. What is not allowed is you can't have an illegal inducement for someone to transfer, right? It's not allowed in the NCAA's own rules. So the quote here from the agent was problematic. You'll see why. If Isaiah and his family don't feel that the NIL number meets their expectations, they will be entering the transfer portal tomorrow while maintaining his eligibility in the NBA draft and going through the draft process. Isaiah would like to stay at Miami. He had a great season, but he has seen what the incoming Miami Hurricane basketball players are getting in NIL, would like his NIL to reflect that he was a team leader of an Elite Eight team. So it's putting it's almost as if the agent is talking to Miami, but he's not talking to Miami. He's talking to, John Ruiz and Life Wallet. But is Miami involved because they're directly helping? It's a very odd look. So this is one more story, and then Tarun, I'll bring you where the sentiment is now collecting. This is a tweet from Ryan Kartje, who is the USC beat reporter. A lot of talk about a top wide receiver transferring to USC. This is the Pittsburgh, I think it was the Blitnikoff. What was his name, Tarun?
Addison, I believe.
Yeah, so he writes a few notes on that discussion. USC can't offer a transfer a huge NIL payday itself. That's an inducement. That payday would have to come from separate donors. USC does not currently have an organized donor collective. So the problem is when you put things out into the atmosphere, if you say the quiet part out loud, like, hey, I need some more money to stay, who is ponying up? These shades of gray are making people feel more and more uncomfortable, yet the NCAA is nowhere to be found. I don't know, Tarun, what do you think about this USC Pitt deal? I know we had spoke about it a little bit. Booming deal. He's still at Pitt right now.
I don't think he's the only guy that has entered the portal in hopes that he was going to get a better NIL deal at one of those bigger helmet schools. Like, I think that there's a lot of kids in the portal that thought that they were going to get an offer from somewhere like USC. And that's what I'm concerned about, is like a lot of these kids are getting bad advice. And part of the reason that we were hopeful that agents would be involved in this space is because they know the landscape and that they were going to be able to provide good advice to these kids. And I don't know if that's necessarily happened at this point.
What we're talking about is two different conversations, right? And this is good. This is exactly where we need to flesh this out. There's the athletes getting paid, and then there's the transferring, which people are really annoyed about. I think the transferring, but they're tying it to the NIL because people are transferring and they're making a lot of money. This is a quote from an ESPN anchor, college football anchor, Matt Barry, over the weekend that picked up a lot of traction. People in our world, Darren Heitner, Jay Billis, Mark Edelman, everyone jumped on and just saying, hey, you got to take a step back, brother. So Matt Barry, quote, people screamed, let him transfer. People screamed, pay them. Screamers never have a responsible plan to make it work. They just scream nonsense to be the loudest. This is now college football. Well done. And I imagine Matt Barry to himself was like doing a little slow clap, like, well done. Okay. So just because the fact that college athletes are getting paid, God forbid, right? Just because the fact that athletes can now transfer, when coaches transfer schools, they can also transfer. So student athletes have rights. Student athletes can have freedom of movement, and they can also get paid money. So Matt Barry's platform is, I guess, and he's a blue check mark Twitter. People can look him up. He's got a ton of followers. I guess his platform is let's hold everybody down and nobody can make any money and nobody can transfer. Let's go back to the Stone Age of the world. That when the Ivy Leagues are winning the national football championships, what are we doing here?
I think you and I are aligned, like what you tweeted out the other day, having a positive mindset about
Glass half full. Glass half full.
Yeah, I think things are going to settle down. I'm saying why everything comes back to the lack of leadership is because when you don't have rules, you have gray areas. And so people are uncomfortable with how things are operating in the gray areas. Of course they are, because it's different. It's so different from what we've come to understand college sports as. But if you think that things like this were not happening under the table, you're fooling yourself. Boosters have been involved in college athletics for the entirety of their existence. So this has been going on some level, whether that's brought to light and you don't like the way it looks. Listen, that's the sport. That is what it is. So I think that the players having more rights, maybe that's a new dynamic that people don't necessarily like, but the players have to have rights. They have to have the ability to do what's best for themselves. But what we need to have is some sort of collective way to improve the situations at enough places that people feel inclined to stay and they feel inclined to have that loyalty. But what is loyalty if like the school is not delivering for you, the coaches are not delivering for you, or even that your marketability isn't being achieved and you can do that better? Like, these are rights that the players should have. And I'm also hopeful that we'll reach a situation where more kids want to stay. Like, it pains me to say it, but so North Carolina is having all of those kids who just went to the national championship. All of those kids are coming back. They're top scorers. And a lot of that is because they don't necessarily have a bright future in professional basketball. They probably wouldn't play at a high level in the NBA, most of those guys, but they're going to make money in NIL. And that's nice. Like, I'm very nostalgic for those old Duke teams where guys stay 3 and 4 years. So I'm hopeful that this is going to contribute to that, but we'll see. I don't know yet what it's going to look like.
Let's take this guy, Nigel Pack, because most of these NIL deals are not out there. Nigel Pack is a good ball player from K-State. He's now at Miami. We just told you he's making $800,000 over 2 years. That's fantastic money, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if Nigel Pack's going to get drafted. I don't know if he's going to make to the pros. I don't know if he's going to play. I mean, the guy would probably play overseas if he's that good. But that's great money to be making as a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, $400,000 a year.
Yeah.
I said a year ago that I'm always glass half full. People can, people can say the negative part. I'm happy to say the positive. That I saw a world where athletes would be more inclined to stay longer and maybe get compensated. Like we're coming off the NFL draft. Maurice Clarett, who was a former stud running back for Ohio State, goes, I want athletes to get every dollar from NIL. There's a guy, Tarun, I know you follow this, like Justin Ross is a wide receiver for Clemson. He was going to be, at Clemson back in the day with Trevor Lawrence. People thought he was going to be a first-round pick. And the guy just went. He had a great freshman year. And then, he opted out for the COVID year. His senior year this past year, was okay. It was fine. And he doesn't get drafted. So
he got hurt. He had a very serious injury.
But the guy was either way, the guy's not drafted. The guy's probably, it's going to be uphill battle to make it. That guy, as far as we know, at least above the table, didn't make any money for that time in school. Maybe he made some money last year during the NIL era, but not at his peak earning capabilities. So I am never going to be one to say that athletes should be the only ones in college not to make money. That's very dumb. I don't know why anyone would say that, but I think we just got to be glass half full. We got to hope for the best. And I think college football reinvented itself after the television era, and all these millions of dollars were just infused. The only one that never caught up was really Mark Emmert. Now Mark Emmert's being kind of shown the door over here with the NCAA. So okay, I think Tarun, do you have anything to add on NIL before we start wrapping it up?
Yeah, and who knows what is going to replace Emmert, like whether there will even be like a strong president figure. I'll say that us being involved in this space and being knowledgeable about this, our responsibility is to help chart that course forward. And that's why, I have appreciation for what we do and what Heitner does, because we're in charge. We're responsible for what this landscape is going to look like going forward. And so, yeah, I understand that people are uncomfortable right now. And for the student athletes, they're working hard. And I think that if companies are willing to pay them to endorse their products, that's excellent. And they deserve it.
Let them do it, right? I don't see why not. This will work itself out. At some point in time, you and I will talk about my standpoint for a federal bill, but probably not this time. We're going a little long here on a Sunday.
One more thing about Isaiah Wong. I think that the most interesting thing about that was that he then, after these statements were put out, he said that those statements did not reflect.
We should talk about that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so he said that the recent statements made without any authorization on my behalf do not reflect my views, and in no way was I willing to jeopardize my relationship with LifeWallet or the University of Miami. Basically, you put it on his agent, Adam Pappas, that those statements were incorrect. Interestingly, when John Ruiz was like, I'm glad Isaiah Wong isn't going anywhere, he says in that tweet, Adam Pappas saved the day. Great job, Adam, in calling me and getting the parties to speak. So it's very weird. Like, on one hand, Isaiah Wong is saying, like, I don't know, Pappas, why you put that statement out there. And the LifeWallet guy is like, good job, Pappas. Like, you got everyone to talk.
He said the statements are made without my authorization. So, like, you can really, if you want to get in the weeds, like, what was made without the authorization, the threatening to go to a different school, or that you wanted more money? Because it seems like you got more money. So I don't know, shades of gray here. So I don't know. I as a lawyer, I don't like a world that's being operated without a sheriff in town. It just is very strange. But I do like what's coming of it. It's got to be boundaries somewhere, someplace. As you said, Taryn, I love that you're now becoming a big leader in the field. I've loved covering this on the show. I can't mention the name of the client, but I've signed a new client at this, the weird NIL world, a very special client. I'm not going to, maybe I can reveal it at some point, but a listener of the show. So, I think people appreciate when we go into these waters, when we go after Barstool, and we do some fun stuff like that. I guess a good time here. So we love all of our listeners. We love all the feedback we get. We've been in talks still with Underdog Fantasy. Those are our sports betting sponsor. They have some really good Major League Baseball deals. I'm looking right now. They have this Sunday slider. They have these 3-person drafts, $10 drafts, $3 drafts. But here's the thing. They have a match if you use our promo code CONDUCT, they will match your first deposit up to $100. So you can have some fun playing baseball and making some money.
It's the easiest place to play fantasy football. You can draft your team with no in-season management, get the optimal score each week of the season, and have a shot at over $10 million in total prize money in their Best Ball Mania 3 contest.
Wait,
that's
how much money? How much money did you just say?
$10 million.
Wait, did you say it was? That's a lot. That's actually a lot of money.
Million with an M. That's amazing.
That's more than you and I make in a year.
Way more. Head to underdogfantasy.com or on the App Store. They've got an app, and sign up with the promo code CONDUCT. And again, Underdog's going to match that first deposit up to $100. Our code CONDUCT. Go ahead, get out there, use it, and have some fun.
You and I might need to do some head-to-heads here. You and I might need to go head-to-head.
Let's do it.
Just saying, it might have to happen. Okay, so before we end this, you're hearing a little bit of soreness in my throat. I'm getting past big C COVID diagnosis. Just a quick story, and then we'll end this. So you guys, you probably listen to this on Monday. My wife and I took a flight to Florida last weekend, and we went to see my wife's grandma. It was supposed to be a quick trip, in and out, really quick. We hadn't seen her in a little bit, and then wouldn't you know, once we get down, my daughter who's 2, starts having this runny nose, and we're like, that's interesting. So we're like, precaution. We'll have her take a test. Positive. And then mom and dad test positive. And then, we have a little one, an infant, and she tests positive. So we're in Florida, and we're like, you know what? We cannot fly back. So, because we couldn't put everybody in harm's way. So we said, you know what? Road trip time. Went to the fine people at Hertz Rent-A-Car. Hertz is not sponsored the podcast. Maybe they will after the friends I've made over there. Gave them some good business. We drove all the way from Boynton Beach, Florida to Westchester County, New York. And it was a 21-hour trip. We did it in about 27 hours. We got some sleep in at I'm not sure what hotel it was, but yeah, it was pretty much a blur. So your boy has been over here struggling in a COVID infested house for 3-4 days. But I think we're almost out of it. You and I spoke on Friday. I sound a little bit better, right?
Yeah, you sound great now. That honestly sounds like a nightmare. I was telling Hadley about that, and we just could not imagine having to do that with 2 young ones. So
it's rough. The rough thing. My daughter was, you never know. My daughter's 2. She's never really been sick. So, it's one thing if I'm sick, like whatever, I'll suffer in silence. I'm not a huge complainer, but like your kid, when they're crying, you don't know what they're going through. Could it be like a little bit of a sore throat, but they're milking it a little bit, but we all have had the same symptoms. So then I just felt, because my daughter had it first, and I'm like, man, like if she's feeling what I'm feeling, like that is just the worst. And then I have my 9-month-old who, she had a sore throat, but there's a lot of throat pain. And I'm like, I can't imagine that she's going through this right now. So she had a scary moment during the week. Her temperature spiked to like 103, and we had to call the doctor. I was like, then you have little kids, Taryn, some point you'll get there. I know you're engaged, you're making your way there to a lovely family at some point. Sometimes your kid needs Motrin, and they don't want Motrin. And there's like a little syringe, like a plastic syringe that you shoot the medicine into, children's Tylenol. But my daughter Dylan, she's 2.5, kid's a genius, does not want the Tylenol. So fights us. And then what she does, just a genius, she just gargles until, like she just doesn't want it and just spits it out. And I'm like, I don't know how to get you to swallow. So, we mix it into some milk and different stuff, but it's the stuff they don't teach you in parenting, how to get your kid to take medicine when they absolutely do not want to, because it is tough. It is certainly tough. Tarun, I think we did a good episode. Bauer, obviously, Matt does a fantastic job. And Tarun, I knew you were the guy for the NIL stuff. As you and I know, I actually told you offline, we're actually we're going to ramp up our NIL efforts. We're going to bring in some people here. You're going to hear some more NIL voices. But reminder, we don't talk about it that often. If you do want to write for conductdetrimental.com, you're certainly more than welcome to. I spoke to a couple law students this week who expressed an interest. And if you're listening, our numbers are up in the listenership. But if you do want to contribute, certainly can. And the people that we've had on the podcast are, you guessed it, contributors to the website that have wrote stuff for us. So we try to spotlight those people whenever we can.
Yeah, we'll put you in the newsletter.
And the newsletter, Landis Barber was in there. Landis Barber has been, shout out to Landis. I know he listens, has been contributing early and often. And we're like, you know what, we got to hook Landis up with the newsletter. Tarun, how many subscribers are we up to in the newsletter?
We're at more than 1,000. We're around 1,200 or so.
Okay. We're gonna do another push. We'll get you to 2. We'll get you 2K.
Yeah.
Tarun, Tarun 2K. It's a good nickname.
Ooh, let's go.
Okay. So I think it's a good time to put this episode in the books. From Tarun, myself, Wallach, Matt Tympanick. We'll see everyone next time on another episode of Conduct Detrimental.